Hi guys. Is it 11 o'clock at night? Yes. Did I just brew myself some coffee? Yes. Cheers though. I'm doing another recap video for my reading. So here's your June reading recap from me and what I read in June. You can just chill with me, grab a cup of coffee, and let's get into this video. So I read 6 books this June, one less than last month. The first book I read this June was The Art of Racing in the Rain. For one, I got this because it was at Goodwill, and I've just heard like pretty good things about this book. Also, it's Washington based and I live in Washington, so I think that's really cool. It supposedly was like supposed to make me cry. I did not cry. I don't know if I'm weird for that. So my rating for that really went down. It was a 3.25 for me because it just wasn't as like entertaining to me as like people were saying. I'm not into cars at all, and a lot of this book like focused on car references. I know it was like supposed to be like about that, but I don't know. I just didn't find it that interesting. I'm sorry. So yeah, I gave this a 3.25. I think like dog lovers especially would really like this book, even though it's sad. I did think the characters were super lovable, and that is something that I did really like about this book. And I guess I did like the point of view coming from like a dog. I think that's really unique and not very often done. But that was kind of my view on it. So would I read it again? No. Would I necessarily recommend it? Not necessarily, unless you're like a dog lover. Gosh, I feel like such a hard critiquer this month because there's some books that I did not like that I read this month. So I read the ever popular If He Had Been With Me. Boy, was that a mistake. Clearly I wanted to cry this month and I never got no tears. So I even tabbed this book. I was supposed to be reading it with a book club of mine, but the book club didn't end up working out. But I read it anyways, and my tabbing system was basically just the main characters and then sad, and then I added a romance tab. Like, yeah, there was some sad parts, but for one, it was really predictable, way overhyped. This is a book talk book from TikTok, way overhyped. Everyone's like, I cried so hard at this book. I really recommend it, it's so good. I'm so sorry, no. I literally did not shed a singular tear, and I cry easily. I cry easily. Did not shed a singular tear with this. There were some really toxic things in this book. From one of the characters, like romantic relationships, as well as for one, the main couple that this book is supposedly supposed to be about, they barely are talked about. Like, they're barely in this book, and that's what I came there for. Another reason I didn't like it is because the tiaras. That is so weird. I'm sorry, like, she's in high school and she's wearing tiaras every day to school. I could not get past that. I almost wanted to DNF this. I literally gave this book a 2.5. I gave this book a 2.5. Meanwhile, everyone's like, 5-star read, 5-star read. 2.5. The ending was so abrupt. Like, the whole entire book, like, basically all of this was basically just, like, nothing important. And then, like, the last, like, 10 pages is where everything happens. So, I didn't like that. Okay, I promise I did read good books this month. Those ones, I can't, I'm sorry. They weren't my favorite, especially If He Had Been With Me. Okay, on to the next book that I actually rated a bit better. I feel like I need to change my rating because this book just did a lot, like, for me. It's called Elevation by Stephen King. I read Elevation since it's a novella, super short. It's only like 100 pages? Yeah, 145 pages. I rated this a 3.5. which is pretty good for a really small book. I actually cried at this. I cried at this one, and it's not even a sad book. This is a fantasy book. This is a fantasy book, and I cried at this, and I couldn't even cry at this. Make that make sense. I'm sorry, make that make sense. Basically, this is just about a small town called Castle Rock, and it follows this main guy. Basically, he has like a strange condition where he's like losing weight rapidly without getting any thinner. Anyways, he gets new neighbors and they're like lesbians. Maybe that's also why I liked this book. I literally cried at the ending of this book because I really did, like, even though it's so short, I really did fall in love with the characters. Maybe it's because I like relate to the women, especially in this book, but I really highly recommend this. I know I rated it a 3.5, but honestly, maybe I'd even give it like a 3.75. It's just because it was really short. I wanted more. I wanted more from this book. Okay, so I made an entire whole video about this book, so I won't stay on it too long if you want. It's literally the last video that I just uploaded on my channel. I read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I can't even put into perspective how much I love this book. That's why I made a whole video on it. I did like reading ACOTAR for the first time ever. This is the first book in the series of ACOTAR. I rated this a 4.75. Like I said, not gonna get too deep into it because I literally have an entire video on this, but I really highly recommend reading this book even if you're not a fantasy junkie, because I don't like fantasy that much, even though clearly maybe I might, but this was a book talk book that was not overhyped. This has the correct amount of hype. Coffee break. The 5th book that I read this month, it's Elvis and Me by Priscilla. And this basically is just like the first-hand experience Priscilla had being married to Elvis and like meeting him. It goes through literally when they meet and then their entire life up until like get divorced, and even after that up until like his death and stuff too. And I love this book. I gave this book a 4-star rating. For one, I just love Elvis. If you know me, you know this. I love Elvis. This is a really old book. I actually got this at a secondhand store. Wow, I really did like this book. I literally read this in one day. It was just a really easy and quick read, and it was super like informational. Coming from Priscilla, like we really got to dive into her life and how she was affected or not affected by like Elvis, and just how they worked together as like a pair. And it really does open your eyes to like how different Elvis was behind the scenes versus in the scenes, because you know everyone loved him. But if you like Elvis, I do recommend this. It was really good, and I got this for $2. Crazy, because I've been wanting to read this for a really long time. Yeah, I really like this book. This is one of my favorite books I read this month. All right, my 6th and final book of this month was Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I rated this one at 3 stars, which isn't amazing. I love the concept of this book. It's basically about how people can go to this coffee shop and travel back in time. We follow, like, I think it's like 4 different mini stories in this story. They all end up connecting to each other though. That is one thing that I do really like about this book, is the flow between the like chapters was actually very nice. It was really good. Since it was translated, it's a little bit clunky and not the wording that I prefer and the detail that I prefer in my type of book. Am I gonna get the other 2 in the series? No. For one, the cover art of this, so cute. Title, so cute. Idea, really cute. It just wasn't executed the way I would have wanted. Like, it had so much more potential. So yeah, that is what I read. I think my favorite books from this month, I mean, it's probably quite obvious, is these 3. Elevation, ACOTAR, and Elvis and Me. I'm not sure which is my favorite, probably ACOTAR. I feel like I read kind of a lot. One book less than last month, like I said, but I guess we'll see what I read in the month of July. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.